My name's Anichi Malchian, and this month I'm into Dystopian Wastelands. Here's 6 dystopian things so you can get into it too.
Te vienen buscando, te vienen buscando. Te vienen buscando, te vienen buscando.
For anyone wondering what a mylopian wastebin is, it's a bit like this. Dystopian. Noun. A nightmare vision of society, often as one dominated by a totalitarian state. Opposite, utopia. Wasteland. Noun. 1. An unproductive or useless area of land. 2. A place or time considered intellectually or spiritually barren. So a really good example of a dystopian wasteland is Divergent by Veronica Roth. It's certainly intellectually barren, and it is dictated by the totalitarian young adult publishing regime, not to mention the proles. In the sense that we're using it though, dystopian refers to a subgenre of science fiction most readily defined by its dissection of social politics. Add in the wastelands and we're not talking the politics of a city, but rather the fringe and farming societies often overlooked by urban dystopian. These can be really interesting as they allow an exploration of, say, farming in the aftermath of a nuclear war. Many of them also examine the internal conflict you would feel being utterly alone in a ruined, useless landscape. I love this genre because it combines those hellish vistas and wide open country spaces with both the nebulous ubiquity of the political and everyday sci-fi survival horror. And where else are you going to get that combination? Nowhere. So sit back, strap your ears in, and let Dystopian Wastelands be your new thing. I'm going to start with a few books. 1. What is pretty much the daddy of the genre, Stephen King's Dark Tower series. Many of us know Cy King as purely a horror writer. Surprise, surprise, King is also a big western and fantasy fan. His Dark Tower series follows Roland of Gilead, a knight errant on a quest to reach something called the Dark Tower. It sounds fairly straightforward, but the series is anything but. Roland's world acts as a nexus between different times and places, all bound together by the tower. This allows for some bizarre world hopping, but it's also suggested that Roland, who looks about 40, has spent thousands of years attempting to complete his quest. He really exists for no reason other than to find the Dark Tower, and the people he meets along the way are inexorably drawn up into his quest. But it's the world that gives the series its atmosphere. The place is remarkably empty. Throughout the books, Roland encounters only a few dozen other people and a handful of civilizations. This would be like Frodo only ever meeting 3 other people and a base camp at the Gate of Mordor. He wouldn't even have the Shire. Everywhere in Roland's world are these relics of past civilizations, which the centuries have corroded away. The Chari train and the wrecks of buildings. Even the Dark Tower speaks of a time long forgotten. It's wonderfully atmospheric, and it will give you nightmares for weeks. 2. Sean Lafferty Webb's Bus Stop on a Strange Loop. This is one of my favourite books of all time. Bus Stop opens on a ruined hulk of a city. Society has been on a long downslide, and things like forced labour camps and just plain shooting people have become the norm. There's never enough food and the government is increasingly hostile, and so when protagonist Nicky leaves the city to search for his brother Ethan, it's less of a quest than one last desperate attempt to connect with his lost family. He does eventually find Ethan's hideout. While his brother is still missing, Nicky waits in the house, slowly running out of water and already out of food. The house itself is the only one standing in what Nicky notes appears to be an old town. There's boxes of weird junk and old photographs lying everywhere. It gives the story a very strange atmosphere. And Bus Stop is, for me, the very epitome of a dystopian wasteland. That loneliness in Nicky, and in fact the whole book, gives it a beauty and a melancholy that just resounded with me. You may only find this one online, but don't miss it. 3. Anna Herlihy's Clarity. Oh boy, we're back into the open wastelands. Herlihy just does wastelands so damn well. Clarity is set on Earth in about the year 6000, after a disease known as the Blood Plague has devastated humanity. What survived of humankind divided into 2 factions. Those who moved underground into advanced communities and kept themselves safe, and those who were forced to remain on the surface in desperate poverty, totally exposed to the plague. To combat the plague on the surface, bad guys called doctors roam the barren landscape, pretty much killing anyone they suspect is infected. After years of this, people on the surface have become terrified of the doctors, and the doctors have used this power to instate themselves as the leaders of the surface world. When the story opens, the doctors are also making big threats on the underground cities. There is no arguing that Clarity is dystopian. What makes it wasteland is the sense of size in Herlihy's landscapes. Her characters cross a virtually featureless plain, and it takes them a few days. They cross a bridge spanning the ocean, and it takes weeks. It's a hell of a journey, and one fraught with danger and mystery and some of the best drama you'll find in science fiction. 4. This is the only short story on the list, and will be the hardest to find. It's Joe R. Lansdale's On the Far Side of the Cadillac Desert. Lansdale is predominantly a crime writer, and has got to be one of the most underappreciated writers living in America. He also does horror exceptionally well. He's my go-to guy for showing people how to write colourful dialogue and infusing exposition into storytelling. His stories like A Thin Dark Line and The Bottoms are both crime stories and phenomenal cultural pieces from mid-1900s America. But okay, this story. I found it in an anthology of zombie stories called, well, The Giant Book of Zombies. It was published forever ago and I don't know how you'll go finding it, but Lansdale may have a copy of the story available on his website. It is a zombie story. It's also set in the Cadillac Desert, a place where old caddies stick up out of the sand. There's bounty hunters and a chase across the desert. The cultural references are so iconic and the story is so brutal, but it's infused with this wonderful character, this charm of open places. I don't know, it's a Lansdale thing. The story is very like him, and so typically also very good. 5. You've been reading a lot of books lately. Maybe it's time to take a break. Another medium that does Dystopian Wastelands really well is comics. There are plenty of comics out there set in a post-nuclear world or something similar, and the following are two of my favourites. The first is Attack on Titan. Attack on Titan has surged in popularity over the last 12 months, spawning an anime adaptation, video games, a light novel, and even a live-action ad for Subaru. You do not want to drive your Subaru around the Titans. The ad is lies. Attack on Titan, or Shingeki no Kyojin, was written by Hajime Isayama and began serialization in 2009. It's up to 13 volumes with the 14th due soon, so there's plenty of content available. In this world, humanity is confined to walled cities to protect themselves from creatures rather aptly called Titans. Titans eat humans on sight, and much of the story, which is action-intensive, centers around the fight to keep the Titans out of the cities. Just how terrifying are these things? Not only are humans forced into these compounds with vast inhospitable stretches between them, they're also active prey for these repulsive monsters. These things are so scary, even just to look at. Even without feeding on humans, they manage to encapsulate everything that Dystopian Wasteland represents. The hugeness, the savageness, the paranoia, and the loneliness, without doing a thing. 6. Trigun. Written and illustrated by Yasuhiro Naito, for me, Trigun is the series that started it all. It's another manga, though it also has an anime adaptation, and the anime is what caught my attention. Trigun is set on a desert planet, in a time long after humanity has colonized the stars. The story follows Vash the Stampede, a gunslinger with a huge bounty on his head, $60 billion double dollars. What is a double dollar? Do you have to glue them all together? Vash's reputation for collateral damage is so huge that it's rumoured he put a hole in the moon. He's categorised as a localised disaster and is pursued by insurance agents tasked with minimising the damage he causes. You may have guessed it already, but Trigun is really goofy. Vash is a total screwball and not at all deserving of the titles given to him by local legend. But he does have these grand adventures on this barren planet, Gunsmoke, which is filled with iconic scenery and very much imbued with the spirit of westerns. While it's not always light-hearted, Trigun is certainly one of the more fun Dystopian Wastelands, and has a great pick-me-up after finishing the Dark Tower series. And this light bulb, what's it doing? And there you have it, my 6 Dystopian Wasteland things. If you have anything you'd like to see added, or even removed, you can comment below. Be sure to come back on Monday when I'll have a reading of Sean Lafferty Webb's Bus Stop on a Strange Loop. And on Tuesday I'll be posting a blog article with everything there wasn't room for on this list, like the video games. Have a great weekend and I'll see you at Supernova.
Te vienen buscando, te vienen buscando.